We've done talk for writing. We've talked a lot at our children, but we don't talk with them. And I think we've started to live in an age where we don't talk to and with each other anymore. We talk at each other. We like each other's comments without even saying a word to each other. Sometimes we type a little comment in on Facebook, or we tweet. We're limited to 140 characters if we Twitter or text language. This is all old news, and we all know this. But we're forgetting how to talk with each other, to converse, and we're forgetting to let our children talk. Now, even in early years now, we're talking more and more conversing about having to get our children writing, getting marks down on paper at an earlier and earlier age, through Key Stage 1, right through school. But how on earth can children start to write if they don't even talk? And if we're not conversing with them and giving them a chance to converse back, how on earth are they going to get the chances to talk? So this evening, because I come from a storytelling performance background, I'm going to hope to give you some safe areas in which your children in class can converse with each other, with you. To give you in the staff room some safe areas where you can converse about what's going on at home, in class, whatever it is. To try to get some of this conversation, this talk back into our lives. Because language should free us, and we start, I think, with the education system at the moment, we are getting cramped down, we are getting hemmed in by what we're supposed to do, to tick that box, to like that comment from the education department. I'm convinced that Facebook is working in cahoots with the government. Soon we won't have to read at all. All we have to do when we're voting for anything is just recognise a thumb up and a thumb down, and we just prod with our fingers at a screen to say whether we agree or not. Get the children maybe to do these exercises. Get them to massage their faces, to wake up our faces, to wake up our mouths, our tongues, our teeth, so that we can speak. We'll do it just a little bit now of just a little brrr. Just blow the air out brrr. Through your lips. That's it. Brrr. So I will speak to you as if you're 5 and 6 years old this evening, but hopefully you can go and talk to the children, get them doing this tomorrow, and then let's imagine those bees buzzing around the room. Let's have a little zzz. And then just between our lips, just get that so we get a nice buzzing sound there. And then a final with the blade of our tongue against the back of our throat here, and that sound. Yeah, you know, the sort of noise that you make when you're at the dentist in the dentist chair and you've got your mouth filled with sort of tubes and wires, and then he says, "So did you go on somewhere nice for your holidays?" You go, so we can do these sorts of exercises with the children as a fun game, maybe at the beginning of a storytelling session, at the beginning of an oracy or a conversation time in the day, to get their mouths working before singing a song maybe or reciting a nursery rhyme. A couple of years ago now, I was visiting a school with my storytelling box. I was struggling across the car park just as the parents were bringing their kids in. 2 mums were talking. One had her child here. It was the same thing as this. She was talking over here, but the child was off somewhere else. Stop it. She was saying to her friend, "He had me in tears this morning," she said. By the way, the boy, I found out later because I recognised him because he was in year 3. And I recognised him because I saw him in the front row when I was telling this class a story. He was in year 3. She said, "He had me in tears this morning." She said, "He sang happy birthday to me. I didn't even know that he knew the song." Now, how on earth can you bring up a child and get them even to school age, let alone right the way through Key Stage 1, and be surprised that your child knows the words of happy birthday? Where did they learn that from? So, of course, the implications that, I know you recognise this, the implications of that are huge, because if the child surprises their mum by singing happy birthday to them, what else isn't that child getting at home in terms of nurture, in terms of care, in terms of a sharing of a culture, and just respect? Now, that draws me on to the first of my little slides that I've put around the room this evening. And I know that they're not real slides, they're not on a screen. I'm completely analog, I don't do digital. Reasons for that later on. It comes to this: I could not stand myself, for I cannot read or write my own language. It makes me ashamed and always sad to face that fact. They're not good with words because they're not hearing them, they're not getting the experience. Again, you will all have stories similar to this. I won't use the actual language because I'm being filmed. But a few years ago, I was walking down the road in Darlington, where I was living at the time, and across the road, a parent was yelling at their young child, younger than that, out there. And it was, I've told you before, get in this house, now you little... And I was taken aback because I'd never ever heard those words before in my life. But shocked that, even though I knew it happened, that I was hearing it in the street. A woman on the other side of the street was close by. She turned around and said, "You shouldn't use that sort of language to him." And of course, she got the response, "You've guessed it already. It's the only language he understands." Irony heaped on irony. In a way, the parent actually got it. The parent understood what you give them, they understand, but hadn't processed it to realise what they were doing to their child. Now, there's no wonder that words are a threat and a danger when they're used threateningly and in a dangerous situation like that, and why kids feel as if they're in a cage. There was a quote. This was on the RSC, the Royal Shakespeare Company, not the car breakdown service. RSC, not RAC. Hilary Mantel, who wrote Bring Up the Bodies and Wolf Hall, double Booker Prize winner. She said, "I've enjoyed Shakespeare in African schools with teenagers who had only basic English and who had never been inside a theatre or imagined one." She says, "I refuse to say I taught Shakespeare. I don't like to think of it that way. And then it was only by accident that I became a teacher. They loved it because no one had ever told them it was supposed to be difficult. And I certainly wasn't going to tell them." Now, I found this a lot. I will go into a school with a Shakespeare play, admittedly not always for foundation stage, but working with maybe year 4, year 5s, year 6s, or going in with a text that a lot of people would say, "Oh, that's too hard for the kids," or "They won't get that, they won't understand the language." But if we're not giving them that language to reach up to, they're not going to have anything to grab hold of. My friend and colleague Angela at the school I mentioned earlier, she said, Chris, our kids have zero aspiration. They don't reach up for anything because their ceiling, they're in a box, they're in that cage. They don't have a key to get out. But Hilary Mantel quite correctly said, but if you don't tell them something's hard, yes, if you just open it up to them, they will join in. They will see it as an enjoyable thing, as something that belongs to them. And it does, it does. Stories, whether it's Shakespeare, whether it's Wolf Hall and Booker Prize winning books, whether it's Jeffrey Archer, whether it's, what's it called, In the Club, the new drama on TV, whatever it is, any story, EastEnders, Coronation Street, Harry Potter, Big Bad Wolf, Beowulf, doesn't matter. They're all vital parts of our culture that belong to all of us. We all deserve a chance to access them. One other thing, just before I move on to a couple more stories and a couple more workshop games, while we're talking about this. Some of you might be familiar with a writer called Malcolm Gladwell. He's written several excellent books. Outliers is one of them. He's written one called Blink, which is about first impressions, and he writes very well about education. In Outliers, which I could recommend, is an interesting read. Outliers, he talks about a middle-class family. The mother was driving her son to a doctor's appointment. The son was 8 years old. And they were well-educated, middle-class, middle-income family. And the mother was having a conversation. "Oh, when you're going to see the doctor, remember you told me last week you had, there was some sort of reaction that he'd had to some of his medication or something on his skin. You need to talk to him about that, see if he can give you something else, and see if he can see if he can come up with any solutions. Oh, and remember that other thing you told me about. Ask the doctor about that as well. Oh, and say, how long can I expect this to happen? We need to find out from him. You know, he needs to tell you this, and this. She was empowering her child to ask those questions. But Gladwell, further on in the chapter, also talks about people who are outliers in our society, who don't have that sort of upbringing, who aren't allowed to ask questions. They don't realise that conversation and engaging in asking questions is a right and is part of their culture that they're being denied. And the gaps with children growing up, of course, incrementally get bigger and bigger and bigger if we don't start early with them and give them these tools in their toolkit.